again, I failed again. I had a marriage that failed, and then I came to a point at the very pinnacle of my success in the wrestling business where I almost blew my second marriage to a very loving Christian wife. And it was at that point, you know, I had to reach the bottom because I had no place else to go.
So was a Christian wife praying for you, right?
Absolutely.
Making a difference in your life.
Absolutely. As well as a number of people.
Yeah. So what happened? Tell me.
You know,
you hit bottom.
I hit bottom, the pinnacle of my success, and called home one day, was confronted by my wife on a number of issues. And a pastor who had prayed for me for 11 years, who's my best friend today, Pastor Hal Santos. And in my darkest hour, it was he that I turned to because he had invested in me. He had prayed for me and been a friend to me and showed me the love of Christ. And instead of calling any one of a number of other people, it was him that I called.
Wow.
That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And he arranged for us to meet, and he picked me up at the airport and took me to face my wife in his house, about 30 minutes away. And on the way, he said, I was at a place, what do I do? What do I say? All my buddies, all my wrestling friends are basically telling me to lie through my teeth. I was being confronted on a number of issues, you know, unfaithfulness to my wife and drugs, alcohol, the whole 9 yards. And Pastor Hal said, Ted, he said, the truth will set you free. He said, Jesus didn't say it would be painless. He didn't say that it wouldn't come without a cost. He said there's a consequence to sin. He said your wife might leave you. You might lose everything. He says, but know this, that God will forgive you. And Jesus will give you a peace in your life and your heart that you've never had. And I knew that, Steve, from my faith in God as a childlike faith in God. And this man knew my story, and he reminded me of that. He said, remember how God took care of you when your father died and your mother was an alcoholic, and everybody at school was telling you that you'd never be a collegiate athlete, and you trusted God and then. Trust him now like you trusted him then. It's the hardest thing I ever did because I had to confess some pretty horrible stuff. But I trusted him that day, and the fruit of that is a restored marriage, a restored life. And way beyond that, you know, I tell ladies all the time, I'm still married because of my wife's faith in God. She could have left me.
Yes.
She could have taken everything. God still would have forgiven me. God still would have restored me. But the reason that I didn't pay the full consequence of my sin, not because of my faith in God, but because of my wife's faith in God and her ability to forgive me and to let go of that bitterness.
So on that particular day, that one day, you got on your knees, you gave your life. You got on your knees. Absolutely.
I
mean, now, Ted DiBiase, mean, bad dude.
Oh, yeah.
Got on his knees.
Oh, I did more than get on my knees, Steve. I was so broken by the time I went to face my wife. My pastor friend had to literally push me through the door.
Wow.
I couldn't look at my wife. I couldn't face her. Shame. But 2 days later, we went to a youth conference with this same pastor friend of mine. He put a book in my hand that I recommend to every man, written by the late Dr. Edwin Lewis Cole, called Maximized Manhood.
Yeah, Ed Cole.
And that book, I'm reading this book. Here I'm at the pinnacle of my success. I'm flying all over the world. I'm wrestling in front of thousands of people, and I have my likeness made into toys and all that stuff that comes along with the deal. I'm riding that big wave, and I'm reading this book about character, integrity, being a servant to my wife and my family, and I'm just getting lower and lower and lower, and I fail. And then God spoke to my heart, and he said, Ted, he said, you were a bigger man when you were 15 years old, when you trusted me and you didn't cave into the peer pressure. He said, you're a bigger man then than you are now with everything the world could possibly give you.
It takes a real man to be a Christian, doesn't it?
Boy, doesn't it. And I walked into this big conference in Chicago, 3,000 screaming teenagers who had just seen me maybe 5 days previously on a major pay-per-view event, WrestleMania. Here's the $1 Million Man. I could hear it ripple through the building. There's the $1 Million Man. There's Ted DiBiase. I had blonde hair and was about 30 pounds lighter. And
happens to us all.
And that altar call was given, and I realized at that moment that's why I was there, because pride and ego had controlled my life. And God wanted to know. I'd confessed to God. I'd confessed to my wife. I'd laid it out there, and the difference was this time, I said, Jesus, I surrender all. And God wanted to know if I'd get up and go forward. That's what he wanted to know. I went forward, and like I said, I didn't just bend the knee. I got on my face in front of those 3,000 teenagers and just wept like a baby.
My God.
I'll never forget it.
And what did those kids do?
what's amazing was as those kids entered that same altar call, these teenagers lifted me up off of my face and put their arms around me. They hugged me, I hugged them, all of us crying. And just picture that. No more $1 Million Man, no more big celebrity, just, you know, all children of God. It was awesome.
Like the song, He makes us family.
Absolutely.
Even
Exactly.